If you want to be able to keep track of all the changes that you or anybody else makes within your workbook, then you want to turn on the Track Changes feature, which can be found up here on the Review tab, going to the Changes group, and it's right there. Go ahead and click on Track Changes and go down and select Highlight Changes. Then come down below and check Track Changes while editing, but also know that this also shares your workbook, which is interesting because in addition to keeping track of the changes, it also shares it. And if you want to learn more about what sharing does, then you can watch my training video on sharing workbook, and you can see the features within the same group right next to Track Changes, the Share Workbook feature that is. And you could say, well, couldn't I just go ahead and use the Share Workbook feature instead? I suppose, but there are differences between the two. First off, that when you use the Highlight feature, any changes you make gets highlighted, where in the Share Workbook feature, they don't get highlighted, but it will keep track of them. And when anybody else makes changes to the workbook, when you use the Share Workbook feature, it'll highlight the cells, but if you make any changes, all the highlights disappear. They don't stay up. Where with the Highlight Changes feature, it'll always keep the changes highlighted. That is, until you uncheck the highlight changes on the screen, or you accept or reject the changes, which will clear the Excel's memory of them. Having said that, we can go ahead and with it turned on, we can choose which changes to highlight. We can say, well, when all changes are made, or since it was last saved, or since a specific date, or who, everyone or somebody else, or where. If you check where, you can click on its collapsible dialog box button and select a range, so any changes made within the range, it'll keep track of. Or you can just say, I want to highlight every change. Not just when, not just with who, not just with where, but unchecking all of them highlights all the changes. And then you can go ahead and click Okie dokie. And it says the action will now save the workbook. And notice up here on the title bar before I click OK, it says tracking changes, but when I click OK, it adds the word shared because now it's in shared mode. So any changes that I make, like over here, I type in 1, hit enter. Hey, there you go, keeps it highlighted, tracks it. When you hover over it, gives you a pop-up and it says, hey, it was me. On this date at this time, and in cell B4, it was changed from 150 to 1. Cool. Now, we'll go ahead and have Carrie open up the workbook and make some changes because it is being shared, and if she has access to this workbook through the network, then she can make changes. And as you recall in the Share Workbook training video, any changes that I make doesn't get updated to the network until I click Save. Once I click Save, then somebody who opens it up will be able to see those changes. Or if they already have it open, they won't be able to see those changes until after they click Save on their end, and vice versa. Any changes they make while I'm working on it, it doesn't come over into my view until I click Save. So saves it, puts it up, and saves it, pulls it in. Puts up your work, your changes, and pulls in any other changes that somebody else has made while working on this workbook at the same time. Now I think there might be a bug with Excel because this worked in Excel 2013, the exact same steps that I showed in the Excel 2013 training video on tracking changes. But just in case that it's not a bug and it's got something to do with my network, which I don't believe, I think it's a bug, but you can let me know, that it's not allowing Carrie to go ahead and open up this quote-unquote shared workbook on the network. It's saying that it's not shared. In other words, it's telling her to either notify me that she wants access to it, or she can only open it up under read-only mode. She can't make changes. So to get around this, what I have to do is I have to go ahead and turn off the sharing part by coming up here. You can go to Track Changes to highlight and uncheck this, or you can click on Share Workbook and unshare it. It does it either way. So we'll just do it here since that's where we started and click Okie dokie. And it says, hey, it'll remove the workbook from being shared. Are you okay with this? Of course. And then the shared part of the title is gone. So to get around this, if it is an Excel bug, and I've come across Microsoft bugs throughout all of my training since Office 2000, and it happens. But to get around this, if you really want to use the Highlight Shared feature, then come down below and first, let's go to the Share Workbook feature and turn it on that way. Go ahead and check the box Allow Changes by more than one user, then click OK. Click OK to turn the shared feature on. As you can see, it's up in the title bar, so now it's being shared. Then come over here and click on Track Changes to highlight all changes. And I want to uncheck when because I want to keep track of all changes, not just when, or with who or where, and limit myself. Let's go ahead and click OK. And it says no changes were found, and it says to highlight all changes, then uncheck the when, who, and where options. Uncheck all of them as I just did, well, just the one, the when. So all of them are unchecked. Click Okie dokie. And then I can go ahead and make a change, 150, hit enter, and it highlights it. Go ahead and hover over it. gives me the note of who, when it was changed, and from what, in what cell. And let's go ahead and have Carrie now open it up and then make some changes. And I suppose before I do that, I ought to save it so it uploads my change to the network. So when she opens up the same workbook, she'll be able to see the change, or if she already has it open up, she just has to click save to pull in my change. In any case, she'll go ahead and make some changes on her end, and then when she's done, she'll click save. And she said she did that, so let me come over here and click save to pull in those changes. And it says it's been updated with changes made by others. Click okie dokie, and whew, there's that light green. You probably can't see it, but it's right there, 2, 3, 4. So when I hover over it, pops it open, and says, hey, Carrie made this change. The cell C4 used to be 100, now it's 2. Oh my goodness, that's a low number. And then there's the other change right here, and the other change right there. Cool. Highlighting all the changes. When I click off and click save, it keeps those highlights up until, like I said, I come back up here and click on track changes down to highlight changes and say, look, I don't want to highlight the changes on the screen anymore. And let's go ahead and click okie dokie. Gets rid of the highlights, but it still keeps track of the changes. So as you recall in the Share Workbook training video, when you want to go ahead and go, okay, where were the changes and how can I go ahead and accept and reject them? Because if I come back up here to track changes to say, okay, let me go ahead and highlight them again. Let me uncheck this and click okie dokie. They do get highlighted again, but think of how annoying that's going to be when you have to hover over it saying, oh, I don't like that change. Let me hover over it to find out what it used to be. It's 100, and then come in here and type in 100 to override it with your change. I mean, if you got a lot of those to go through, and that's too slow, just come up here to the track changes to accept or reject changes, and it's got to save the workbook before it can proceed, and click okie dokie. And then let's see, which changes, those that haven't been reviewed yet. Okay, that's fine, click okie dokie. Goes to the first one and it says, okay, this was made by Kurt Kershaw, that was me. It was changed from 1 to 150. Do you want to accept it or reject it? We'll accept it. Goes to the next change, and it kept track of all the changes made. First it was by me, first the original value, then by Carrie, and then by me. And you can see the times here, just 3 minutes later, I made the change back to 100. Let's see, do I want to accept this or reject it? Well, go ahead and select the one that you want to accept. If you want to accept it as the 100, or maybe Carrie back to 2, click accept. Goes to the next one, and you can accept all or reject all. We can say reject all. And it says there were 2 changes that were made without reviewing them. Are you okay with this? Yes. So without reviewing them, I rejected them. And so they went back to their numbers, and these were these 2 that were made by Carrie. Cool. And we still have the others highlighted. And if I come back up here to track changes and try to do it again, accept or reject, those that not reviewed yet, well, they have been reviewed. If I uncheck it and then go ahead and click okie dokie, we just have the 2 left. And so I can go ahead and narrow that down. So when I accept those, reject those, if I go ahead and accept and reject, well, now I'm just back to my own change here that I can go ahead and accept or reject that again. But as far as Carrie's changes go, it cleared out Excel's memory. So if I come up here and go down to accept or reject again and click OK, there are no more changes to accept, but it still has my change highlighted, which we know how to turn off again. Just come up here, track changes, to highlight changes. We don't want to see those changes anymore, and click okie dokie, and it gets rid of it. The Protect and Share Workbook feature is the exact same as the Shared Workbook feature, with one exception, of course, the Protect part. That means that you add security to it so nobody else can unshare it or stop sharing it, or the track changes without a password. Sounds good? Because before this training video, if you didn't know anything about this, you'd come up here, click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, click on Share Workbook, check Allow Changes by More Than One User, click okie dokie, click OK again, and you can see up in the title bar it's being shared. So if this is on the network, anybody who has access to this workbook on the network can open it up at the same time and come over here and say, I don't want to share it. They can actually unshare what you're sharing. And that's not good, because if they do that and they uncheck it, click okie dokie and say yes, then any changes I made after that person unshared it won't save back to that workbook. In which case, it'll force you to do a save as and say, well, you got to save it as something else, which is good because then you don't lose that work. So if you didn't want to lose the work, but it saved it as another workbook, how do you take all that and put it back into the original that was unshared? Well, you can watch my next training video on merging workbooks. Doesn't that just sound fun? In any case, let's go ahead and add some protection to it by coming back up here to the Changes group on the Review tab. And instead of sharing the workbook, we want to protect it and then share it. Click on Protect and Share. Check Sharing with Track Changes. And it says this shares your workbook and then prevents change tracking from being removed. If desired, a password must be chosen now prior to sharing the workbook. Because if you don't choose a password and you click OK, anybody can go ahead without a password and unshare it. So it has to be done in the beginning. You can't go back later and go, oh, you know what? Let me go ahead and add the password. When you go ahead and you take the step, you got to add it now. Or when I click OK, and I click OK again, it's being shared, and I'm like, I'd like to add a password. Click on Share Workbook. They could come in here, and they can't uncheck it to stop sharing it, but if they come over here to unprotect it, guess what? Then they can come back here and click on Share Workbook and uncheck it. So they could unprotect it without having a password. That's why it's important that when you click on Protect Shared Workbook in the beginning, because after I check it now and it's still being shared, I didn't do it in the beginning, so it blocks it out. So long story short, again, let's go ahead and click Cancel, click on Share, uncheck it so I can take you back to the beginning, say yes, we're going to unshare it. So up in the title bar, it doesn't say shared, that when you click on this, do it right then if you want a password, check it, and then put the password in. We'll type in boo. Hit enter, type in boo again to confirm it, hit enter again, say OK. It's on the network, so when Carrie accesses this workbook on the network and goes, I want to unshare it, click Share Workbook. Oh, it's not available. Oh, wait a second. I watched Kurt's training video on this. It must be protected. Let's go ahead and see if they add a password by clicking on Unprotect Shared Workbook. Oh, drat. I have to have a password. So she can't do it, but I can. Type in boo, hit enter. Are you sure you want to unshare it? Say yes. And you can see up in the title bar, the title shared is no longer there, so it's no longer being shared. The Merge Workbook feature will merge data from all workbooks into one, but the workbook has to be shared first and can only merge with copies of the original shared workbook. So for example, here's my workbook, and I want to be able to make copies of it to send it off to others. They can go ahead and make their changes to it, not structurally, because if they start moving the cells around and putting the labels over here, Excel's going to have a fit. So just tell them to make changes to the data, not the structure. In any case, after I send copies off to everybody of the original workbook after I shared it first, then they go ahead and they make any changes, they send it back to me, then I can go ahead and merge all those different workbooks or copies of the original shared workbook back into the original shared, and then I can go ahead and accept or reject those changes. Sounds fun? Woohoo! Let's go ahead and do it. So to go ahead and share this workbook, as you recall in an earlier training video for sharing, come up here and click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, click on Share Workbook, and check Allow Changes by more than one user at the same time. This also allows workbook merging, and that's what we're going on right now. So go ahead and click OK, say OK, then up in the title bar it now says it's being shared. Then I can go ahead and save copies of this. So when I click on Save As, so there's my original right there. I can come down here and say this is going to be the first workbook and it's going to be on HR for Human Resources. We'll send it to them. Click Save. And then I'll go ahead and click Save As again. And this can be number 2 for AC for accounting. Click Save again. And then I've got, well, the original and then 2 copies of it. And it's for Human Resources, accounting. I can do customer service, development. Well, you get the idea. Let's go ahead and close out of this. So you can see on the desktop, here's my original shared workbook, and here are the 2 copies of it. So after they get their copies, after I send it off to HR and they double click to open it up, and they go, okay, wait a second. Let's see, Max, that's his extension. Let's go ahead and 1111. That's his extension. Hit enter, click save, close out. Then accounting opens up their copy of the merged workbook that I sent off to them. Double click. And they go, oh, you know what? Max isn't in human resources, he's in accounting. So after you type in the first letter, it pulls in the rest to help you out. Yeah, it's accounting. So just go ahead and hit enter to accept it. Click save, close out. And then after they're done with that, they email them back to me. So I can go ahead and open up the original workbook, double click. And then I need to add the compare and merge workbook feature to the quick access toolbar to be able to pull those 2 workbooks in to compare and merge into this workbook. So come up here and right click anywhere on the quick access toolbar and go down to Customize the Quick Access toolbar. Change it from Popular Commands to All Commands. And let's go ahead and scroll down and find Compare and Merge. And so after the numbers, it'll go alphabetically, A's down to the Z's. So click and drag. There we go. Compare and Merge Workbook. Double click to add it over to the right. You got the green orb. Go ahead and click OK. There's the green orb. Click on it. Opens up the Select Files to Merge into the current workbook. And it's number 1. Hold down the Control key and select number 2 and click Okie dokie. Now before I click OK, it says Human Resources for Max Klinger, extension 2192. After I click OK, it updates it with the changes. Wasn't that fun? Well, as you recall in other training videos, when you're tracking changes and you want to be able to accept or reject those changes because, how am I going to know if this is what I want, if it's a huge database, and I'm like, well, what changes did they make? You can come up here, click on the Review tab, go to the Changes group, click on Track Changes, and go down to Accept, Reject Changes. And we want to cover those that haven't been reviewed yet, so we'll click OK, and it takes us to the first one. And you can see that I made the change, and if it was on somebody else's computer, like Susie's or whoever you send it off to, it'll have their name. That's why it's really important, as I discussed many times in earlier training videos, that you personalize your copy of Microsoft Office by going backstage from File down to Options, the Info tab selected by default, so go down to Personalize your copy of Microsoft Office and type in your name. That's the name that's going to be pulled over after you save your changes. Like if it was Carrie, when she saves it and emails it to me, it's going to show her name here, so I can go, oh, it's Carrie who made the change here. In any case, it's me because I did all the changes. As you saw, I made the changes on the same computer, so it's going to have my name. In any case, I changed the cell D2 from 2912 to 1111. Do you want to accept it or reject it? We'll accept it. And then it goes to the next change, and it says it went from Human Resources to Accounting. Well, good monkeys. We have nobody in Human Resources. I'll have to reject that. So it goes to Human Resources. A digital signature confirms the identity of the person who sent the workbook and is issued by a certification authority or CA, a trusted third party that is, and contains a serial number, digital signature of issuing authority, expiration dates, name and copy of certificate holder's public key so the user can then verify that that certificate is authentic. And so once the signature is attached to the document, it can't be modified without first removing the digital ID. So it doesn't prevent anybody from removing it. It simply means that if it's not there, then it may not be from the person who you think it is, and/or changes have been made. And there's no way to know or find out what changes have been made. And in that case, you want to contact the person and ask them if they'll digitally sign it again, because one of 3 things have happened. Again, either the sender forgot to sign it, or someone else who's pretending to be the person that is trying to reach you is doing it without verification, or it was intercepted and the document was changed. Now, there are 2 ways you can go about digitally signing your document or your workbook here. You can do it visible or invisible. Now, invisible sounds kind of kooky. It just means that it's not readily available to look at, but you can pull it up in a single click. In any case, let me go ahead and show you how to sign it invisible first. And to do that, you want to come up here, click on the File tab, go backstage, Info select by default. Just come down here and click on Protect Workbook, and go down, and it's right there. Add a digital signature. It ensures the integrity of the workbook by adding an invisible digital signature. Now, before you go ahead and click on it, if you haven't installed a digital ID from a trusted third party, then when you click on it, it may allow you to still go ahead and sign it, in which case, if it does, it's only valid for that computer. If you send it off to somebody else, it'll say it's not valid, or there's an error because it's only for that computer. In any case, you can see that I'm signing it as issued by Komodo, and it's got the information there. If you have more than one digital ID, you can go ahead and click Change and then choose another. I just have the one. And you can go ahead and click here to view the certificate properties. And there it is. It's very generic, and I didn't add anything special to it. So when I do digitally sign it, it's not going to have my name, just an email address, in which case it's going to say digital signer unknown. I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead and click Okie dokie and click Cancel. So having said that, when you do sign up through a third party, you want to go through it very explicitly and detailed, so when you do sign it, the person who gets it can get all the details they can. So to be able to find what third parties are available, let's go ahead and click Cancel, go to the front stage, click on the Insert tab, come over here and go to the text group, and go ahead and click on the signature line. And by the way, this is the visible signature, but we'll cover that after the invisible. what I wanted to show you was the Add Signature services, or what services are available. Click on it to open up Internet Explorer, and then you can see Find Digital ID or Digital Certificate Services. Phew, say that really fast. Let's go ahead and scroll down. And these are the ones that says you can use, or they recommend, Microsoft does, like DocuSign, Komodo, which is the one that I used. Go ahead and click on their link, read more about it. If you like it, then go ahead and follow all the instructions to the T so you can install it correctly, because if not, then you'll run into issues like, well, I ran through mine and my digital ID just says it's unknown, and that's not good. In any case, I'll show you that. And then go ahead and close out, install it on your computer, and then to digitally sign it the invisible way, let's go backstage again, click on File, Info selected by default, click on Protect Workbook, down to Add a Digital Signature, and again, mine comes from Komodo, so let's go back to the top here. You can see additional information about what you are signing, and it talks about the contents of this document. The following additional information is stored with this signature, which is the system date and time, the version, Office version, Excel version, and so on. Click OK. Then the commitment type means, what's the purpose of this? Well, we want to create, or we created this document. Then the purpose for me signing the document, you can type in whatever you want. Maybe it's classified. And then to include information about the signer, click on the Details button. And I don't have that much information about me. I could add a little bit more here. There's the title, CED, for Chief Executive Dude. And you can add the production place, address, zip code, country, click OK. And then when you're ready, go ahead and click Sign. Your signature has been successfully saved with the document. If the document is changed, your signature will become invalid. OK. So you can see it does a couple of things. It says here in the backstage it was signed, and it should not be edited. If anyone attempts to tamper with it, the signature will become invalid. So it doesn't lock them down and say you can't work on it. It just says if you do, then it doesn't come with the signatures. So when you forward it on to somebody else who it was intended for in the first place, they don't see a signature, then they hopefully won't accept it and realize for what it is and just trash it. And you can see that this workbook has been marked as final to discourage editing. We'll talk about the feature marked as final. It's just preventing you from making any changes to the document, and that can be easily removed. In any case, we'll talk about that again in a later training video. Let's go ahead and click back so we can go to the front stage. And you can see it says marked as final. The author has marked it as final to discourage editing. Doesn't prevent editing. You can go ahead and click on Edit anyways. But before I do that, if I come down here and I type in anything, can't do it. You can see up at the top in the title bar, it's read only. And to be able to view the signature, you can come down here, and on the status bar, it says the document contains signatures. Go ahead and click on it, opens up the task pane. It's from an unknown signer. Like I said, I didn't sign it up through Komodo and follow all their instructions to be able to get this correctly, in which case, again, it's not Microsoft. As near as I can tell, it's the way I had it set up through the third-party CA. In any case, you can go ahead and right-click on it to bring up the signature details, and there it is. A valid signature. The signed content has not changed, and the signer's certificate is valid. Signature type. Created this document. It's classified. It's by Komodo. Go ahead and click on View to view it. Certificate is intended for the following purposes. Proves your identity to a remote computer. Protects email messages. Go ahead and get details. And the certification path, which the user trust network from Komodo, and it's my email address. And it says the status is OK. Go ahead and click OK and close out. And by the way, let me go ahead and close out of here, because when you digitally sign a document and you close out of it, the next person that opens it up, even if it's you, let me go ahead and close out. And there it is on the desktop. Double click to open it up. It'll then show you the option besides the mark as final feature, but the signatures. So they say it's invisible, and this is the invisible part. It's not very invisible, is it? But you can go ahead and click on it to view it. It is as far as being hidden behind a task pane that pops open when you click on to view the signatures. I can see that being invisible. In any case, there we go again. And like I said, you can either right click on it or click on the drop down arrow, still get the signature details. You can see additional information that was collected. Click on the link, and we saw that before we signed it. System date and time when it was signed. Also the Office version 16, which is 2016. And then you can see information about the signer, which is Chief Executive Dude. Sweet. Click OK. And then when you're done, if you're like, oh, okay, this is fine, I need to make changes to it now that I got it. So to make changes to it, You have to either, well, right-click on it and say remove the signature, or just come up here and click on Edit Anyways. But before you do that, let's click on the Home tab to expand it. You see how all the commands have been faded? That's in the Marked as Final feature, so you can't edit it there. Can't click on anything because, again, it prevents the edit until you remove the digital signature. So when I click off, let's go ahead and click on Edit Anyways and remove the signature. Are you okay with that? Say yes. Signature has been removed. Click Okie dokie. It's been removed here. I can now go ahead and edit it. I no longer see the certificate icon in the status bar down below. And so I can then go ahead and make changes to it. And then when I'm ready, after I approve and make some edits, digitally sign it and send it back. And then to add the visible signature line as opposed to the invisible non-signature line, come up here and click on the Insert tab, go to the text group, and you can click on the icon signature line, and you can see when I hover over it, it gives you a preview in the pop-up, or you can click on the drop-down arrow and select Microsoft Office signature line. Either way it'll work. When you click on it, it brings up the signature setup. Go ahead and type in the signer's name. If you're setting this up for your boss to sign, then go ahead and type in their name, and it's going to be me. And then the signer's title, you don't have to add one, but I'll type in CED for Chief Executive Dude. And then the signer's email address if you'd like. Instructions to the signer, you can leave it as is. Before signing the document, verify the content you are signing is correct, or remove it, add something. And then below that, you can actually allow the signer to add comments in the sign dialog, and then show sign date and signature line. Sounds good. Click OK, and there it is. Click and drag to move it around to reposition the signature line box, and then to resize it if it's too small or maybe it's too big for you, go ahead and hover over one of the circles, the resizing handles, until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then click and drag to make it huge. Click and drag to move it around, and then when you're done, go ahead and close out, and then be sure to save your work, hand it off to your boss. They double click to open it up, and then it says up here, this document needs to be signed. Oh, that's me. Okay. How do you sign it? Well, you just go ahead and double click on the X here, or the image that contains the signature line with the X. And then as far as instructions go, before they sign it, they can start up at the top, see additional information about what they're signing, click on it, and it contains the Office version, the Excel version. Okay, click OK. And then it says before signing this document, verify that the content you are signing is correct. Okay, so we'd close out and read it through and go, okay, that sounds good, or that looks good. And then type your name below or click Select Image to select a picture to use as your signature. So you can go ahead and type in your name as your signature, or if you've got an image that you scanned onto the computer here, go ahead and click on Select Image, browse for it, and then pull it in. Or better yet, you can actually get kind of fun here. If you want to do it this way, you can type in anything that you want to search for that represents your image, like the ghost. Hit enter, and here's a happy ghost. Let's go ahead and insert him, and I just signed it. Well, I haven't signed it, but that's what's going to represent my signature here on the line with the X. But I need to finish off, like, what's the commitment type? Well, I approve this document. Then the purpose for signing it, if you have one. And then down below, to include information about the signer, click on the details. And then you can go ahead and type in the signer's role, address. I'm going to click on cancel. And then if you have more than one certificate of authority that you use to sign, go ahead and click change. I only have one, so that worked out well. Go ahead and click OK, and then click sign. Your signature has been successfully saved with this document. If the document is changed, your signature will become invalid. OK. So now it's signed, and you can see up here that Marked as Final has been set, so nobody can make any changes to it without first editing it. If they edit it, then they remove the ghost. The signature is no longer valid. And so they can go ahead and click on View the Signatures when somebody gets it, and then they can come over here and click on the drop-down arrow to get the signature details. And they can see the ghost, approve the document, see additional signing information. As we just saw before we signed it, click Okie dokie, and then see information about the signer. I didn't add the signer's role or title, but there's the time, close out, close. And then click on the drop-down arrow again, or you can right-click to get the same shortcut menu. Go down to Signature Setup to see how it was set up. Looks good. Close out. It brings it up that way, or you can close out of it. You can also right-click on the signature line and go down to Signature Details, Setup, or Remove Signature, or double-click on it to bring up the signature details, close out, or come down below in the status bar. You can see the little certificate there. says this document contains signatures. Click on it to open up the signatures window. Cool. There's a lot of ways to go about doing this. In any case, when you're done, let me go ahead and close out. Right-click on it to remove the signature, and you'll permanently remove the signature. Are you okay with that? Yes. Signature has been removed. Click OK. Now I can edit it. And I just got a blank X there with no signature next to it. You can go ahead and delete it, or click and drag and move it out of the way, and then make your changes if you need to make additional changes. And then if it's still you, then go ahead and double click on it and go through the same process to re-sign it and send it off. Now, when you digitally sign a document, where does that certificate come from? Where is it stored? In other words, if you got 2 or 3 or you inserted one by accident and you want to remove it, let me go ahead and show you. Just hit the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of that signature line because that's annoying me. It's not signed and I'm not going to sign it. In any case, let's go ahead and close out, save our work. Go ahead and open up the computer, double click on it. For me, it's on my desktop. For you, you can access it if you're using Windows 8 or Windows 10, another way, but what we're looking at is getting to the C drive. Double click on that to open it up. Go down and double click on users. And of all the users that can log in on my computer, the one that I'm currently logged in under, the name that is training. Double click on training. In there, you probably won't see it, is the app data folder, and you can tell it's faded, so by default it's not viewable. If you want to be able to see it, then I'm going to hit the Alt key on the keyboard to bring up the menu here. Go ahead and click on Tools, go down to Folder Options, and you'll learn all about this in my Windows training video. Go ahead and click on the View tab and say that you want to show hidden files, folders, and drives. The reason why they hide them is because you got some more sensitive stuff in there that if you accidentally change it or delete them or move them around, it can mess up your computer. So stay on the path. If you don't, your computer could turn to stone. Oh, that's a nice thought. Let's go ahead and close out of that. So there's my disclaimer. Once you show that hidden folder, again, it's not a folder that you normally see, but it's hidden by default, so it gives you a faded icon here of the folder called App Data. Double click to open it up. Go down and double click on the roaming folder, and then go down and double click on Microsoft, and then go ahead and find your System Certificates folder, double click on that, and then find the My folder, double click, and then double click on Certificates. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and have to cover this up. I don't want you to see the whole key here. That wouldn't be good. But there's the key. All you have to do is go ahead and right click on it and go down to delete, and it's gone. So you can pick and choose what you want to use, or if you made a mistake, you want to get rid of it. Well, that's how you do it. The Mark as Final feature lets the user know that the workbook is final and to make it read-only. In other words, when you're done with something, you're like, okay, this is the final draft. You can go ahead and mark it as final, and it turns off all the editing and any changes that they can make to it. Now they can easily go ahead and unlock that, as it were, and make changes to it, but it's more of a first layer of security, something by accident. They really have to go out of the way to make changes to it, otherwise password protected. Now the Mark as Final feature, we got introduced to it in the previous training video on digital signatures, and here, by itself, this is what it looks like. So to go ahead and mark this as final, saying, okay, everything's good here, this is the final draft, come up here and click on the File tab, Info selected by default, and then go down and click on Protect Workbook, and there it is. Lets readers know the workbook is final and make it read-only. Go ahead and click on it. This workbook will be marked as final and then saved. Okay. The document has been marked as final to indicate that editing is complete, and this is the final version of the document. When a document is marked as final, the status property is set to final, and typing, editing, commands, and proofing marks are turned off. You can recognize the document as marked as final when the Mark as Final icon displays down below in the status bar here. Phew! Go ahead and click OK. And there it is. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little stamp that's hitting down, and there's the mark from the stamp. Well, it's tiny, but in any case, look on your computer and see if you can see it with your larger screen resolution. You can come up here and see the information marked as final. An author has marked this workbook as final to discourage editing. Are you discouraged? Well, you can come down here and type something you want. I'm discouraged. Or you can come up here, click on the Home tab, and try to click on B for bold. I'm discouraged. Until you actually go ahead and click on Edit anyways. Or if you click on the File tab, you can see that this workbook has been marked as final to discourage editing. Click on the drop-down arrow, deselect it, or like I said, click the back arrow and say Edit anyways, and then you can go ahead and make whatever changes you want. If you're looking at a cell that contains a value, like this one right here, and you want to find out before you clear it what other cells or functions and formulas are dependent upon that, if any at all, then with it selected, come up here and click on the Formulas tab, go to the Formula Auditing group, and it's right there, Trace Dependence. When you hover over it, you get the pop-up, and it says it'll show arrows that indicate which cells are affected by the value of the currently selected cell. Or in other words, when I click on it, it'll show the directional flow of data between cells containing values and the formulas based upon them. So we've got the directional flow going to the right and these two formulas that are based upon that value. So the total for March for all 4 quarters, then the average, and then the second quarter total for all the employees and the average as well. Now that's the first layer. If there are additional layers, then with the cell selected, go ahead and come up here and click on Trace Dependence again, and hey, notice that. Once you get the total for everybody, then you get the grand total, as it were, the total for all 4 quarters for each employee, and also the average. So it continues the flow down below. Now to go ahead and clear this out, all you have to do is come up here and click on Remove Arrows, or let me go ahead and click on it once and then twice again. If you want to remove it 1 layer at a time, then click on Remove Arrows, down to Remove Dependence. There's the second layer gone, and then again to remove the final layer. And it works vice versa. So if I select a cell that contains a function or formula like this one, you can see up in the formula bar, there's the sum function. Then instead of tracing dependence, you can trace precedents. When you hover over it, it says it'll show arrows that indicate which cells affect the value of the currently selected cell. So click on it, and there you go. It all points down to here, this range right here, that affects the value of that cell. Now, does it go beyond that? In other words, are any of these cells dependent upon other cells? Well, the only way to find out is to come back up here and click on Trace Precedents again, and what the heck is that? Well, if you look in this cell right here, look up in the formula bar, it's referencing another sheet. That's not the value itself in the cell, that's the value being pulled from another sheet, and it's sheet number 2, cell A1. So instead of coming over here to sheet 2 and looking at A1, which you could do, let me go back to sheet 1. With that reference saying it's outside of this sheet, you can hover over the dashed line and double click really fast. Brings up the Go To feature. Go ahead and double click on the Trace Arrows Sheet 2A1 to go right to it. Pretty cool. Let's go back to Sheet 1. And is there another layer on top of that one? Well, no, but you can go ahead and click on it anyways. And then we can start from something that is dependent upon these totals, that's dependent upon the values here. And say Trace Precedents, say Trace Precedents again, say it one more time. Doesn't go any further than that. And then you can see that this is dependent upon that, which is dependent upon that. So you've got 1, 2 layers. And you can go ahead and click on Remove Arrows for Remove Precedence arrows. Removes 1, removes the second, and finally, and we can't remove that till we come back up here and say Remove Precedence, and then it's gone. But you can also say Remove All, and it clears them out. And then finally, you have the Trace Error arrows. You got the Devo, and so it's saying, look, I'm getting an error because I can't have something divided by 0. div for divide /0. And where's it coming from? Is it this range? Is it that range? Well, you can look at the cell and take a look up in the formula bar and see that it's coming from over to the left. But if you want, you can come up here, if your worksheet's a little bit more complicated than mine, and to the Formula Auditing group, go ahead and hover over Error Checking, click on the drop-down arrow, and say you want to trace the error. Click on it, and it's coming from this range over here. So when it's doing an average, you got to have a number in one of these cells, even though they're all blank and we don't have any averages yet, because if not, then we get a divide by 0 error. So if I come over into this cell, let me click over here, arrow key up, and type in 0, at least it has 1 that it can divide by and not 0, hence the divide by 0 error. And then when you're done, go ahead and click on Remove Arrows. To be able to troubleshoot invalid data, we need to first identify what data is invalid. And looking at my spreadsheet, I can see 2. Well, there's the first one. You got the name ? error, and you can see to the left of it, after I select the cell, get a little tag that you can hover over. And in the pop-up, it says the formula contains unrecognized text. Well, that's a key indicator to me that something's wrong with the formula, so I need to look up in the formula bar at it. But before I do that, you can click on the drop-down arrow if you're curious, and then go down to Help on this error, select it, opens up the task pane over to the right, and it says how to correct a name error. Top reason for this is because there's a typo in the formula name. Okay, so again, check the formula. And then it's important that if you do find something that you don't handle the error by using an if error or is error to mask the error. And I'll cover that in just a minute. In any case, go ahead and close out. To fix it, with the cell selected, let's go ahead and look up here in the formula bar, and it says average D8, where's the through? The colon represents through, so D8 through G8, so that's what I'm missing. That's what it can't figure out. Add the colon. Hey, there we go. It selects the range, quarters 1 through 4 for Mr. Humphreys, which is what we want the average for. Hit enter, and it's happy. No longer do we get the name error. And then, as it mentioned, don't use the is or if error feature to be able to mask the error, like I did here, that there's no data. And the reason why is because the result of that would be the divided by 0 error. I mean, if somebody else is looking at this and they're not familiar with this and they're going, hey, what does that mean? It means that we don't have any data. Well, that's what I did. I said if there's an error, as you can see up here in the formula bar, is, or you can use the if error function, either one works, that if there isn't anything and it's true, then go ahead and say there's no data. And so you don't want to mask the error here. Let me go ahead and hit undo, where there's a typo or I'm missing a colon and saying something like we're missing a colon. I mean, why go through all that trouble when you can just go ahead and add it, right? In any case, we can come down here, which is the other error, and you saw that I used the if error for this no data by saying, hey, we don't have anything over here. You can't divide something by nothing or 0 when it comes to using the average function. So to get rid of it, you can just simply go ahead and type something in one of those 4 cells to have 0 divided into something, which is 0. So 0 into 0, look at that, it's happy with it. Otherwise, when it looks to average up the range here, to take nothing here, 0, because we have nothing in any one of these cells, and divide it into nothing, we get the divided by 0 error. So now at least we have 0 divided into 0 because 0 is a number. And if we do get that error, like I said, for those who don't understand this error, like your boss, maybe he's not familiar with Excel, you can just say, by using the if or is error function, that there's no data in that range to give us an average. So type in something in here, even if it's 0. The 2 features that we'll be going over are the watch window and evaluate formulas. First of all, the watch window is used to watch a cell while you're in another part of your worksheet or workbook. For example, I've got the monthly payment and it's based upon the principal amount, the interest rate, and the number of payments. And down below I've got the paid interest month by month. So the first month is going to be $240, then the next month a little less, and so on, until I scroll all the way down to the very bottom of that column, and I use the sum function in cell D70, as you can see up here in the formula bar, to add up that entire range, so I can get the total amount in interest paid. So when I scroll back up and I'm like, let me go ahead and change the number of payments from 32 to 30 to find out what the total amount of interest will be paid, then I have to scroll back down to see it, and that can be very annoying, up and down, up and down. Instead, you can go ahead and use the watch window feature that will watch one cell while you're looking at another in another part of the worksheet or workbook. How do you ask? Well, come with me, neighbor. Let's come up here and click on the Formulas tab, go to the Formula Auditing group, and click on Watch Window. And there it is. You can go ahead and click on the title bar of it to move it around. As you can see, the 4-way arrow means you can move it up, down, left, or right. So you got a floaty here. And then you can just come over here, select the cell that you want to add to it, and then click on Add Watch. And it says, if you haven't done so already, select the cell that you want to add, and then click Add. And there it is. It's got the name of the workbook, as you can see up here in the title bar, Watch and Evaluate Formulas. And if you want to see it down below here, then go ahead and hover in between the 2 column headers, or the labels for the columns, until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then click and drag out to see more, or in to see less. You can double click really fast to do a best fit. Let me go ahead and click and drag it back. Then the name of the worksheet, Loan Amortization, as you can see down below, there it is. And then the cell, and then the value of the cell, and then the function or formula within the cell. So when I click off of it, it doesn't disappear, does it? When I scroll up, it stays with me. So far, so good. So if I increase the number of payments from 30 to 40 and hit enter, I can stay right there and look at the results for that cell without having to scroll down to see the results. Cool. Wait, but don't buy yet. If you want to get right back down to cell D70, you can just go ahead and double click on it really fast and it takes you right to it. Awesome. And then if you don't want a floaty here, you want to go ahead and dock the watch window, you can do so by clicking and dragging it up to the top until it docks, and there you go. Now it's not a floaty, it doesn't get in your way, but you got less of a viewing area, so you have to maybe scroll a bit more, but whatever works for you. If you want to de-dock it, as it were, you can come up here and click and drag until it pops out, and then when you're done, close out. And then to bring it back up, go ahead and click on Watch Window, and it still keeps it there until you go ahead and select it and delete it. Now if I go to another worksheet within the workbook, click on New Sheet, it's still there, so it doesn't matter where you go. This is your puppy. That's going to be following you around everywhere you go, within the workbook, that is. Let's go ahead and go back to the worksheet and then select it, delete the watch, close out, we're done. Next is the Evaluate Formulas feature. Let's go ahead and scroll to the top. I've got my payment function here, as you can see up here in the formula bar, PMT, and it has, if you want to break it down, D4 is being divided by 12, and then D5, the value of that is 40, and then it's subtracting cell D3, which is the principal amount, to give us the total monthly payment. Now, if you have a complex formula or nested functions and formulas, and you want to evaluate it one step at a time, then take a look at the Evaluate Formulas and see if that's going to be helpful for you by helping you break it down. So, for example, with the cell selected that we want to analyze the function that is, or formula within the cell, then come up here on the Formulas tab, go to the Formula Auditing group, and it's right there, Evaluate Formula. You can see in the pop-up it says it debugs a complex formula, evaluating each part of the formula individually. Stepping through the formula part by part can help you verify it's calculating correctly. Go ahead and click on it, opens it up, and there's your formula. And then down below it says to show the results of the underlying expression, click Evaluate. So the underline is the next step. Then the most recent result is going to appear italicized. So click on Evaluate, and there you go. The result is italicized, which is 0.12, which is the value there, 12%, which is 0.12, and it's being divided by 12. Go ahead and click Evaluate, and you can see the result of that. The recent result is italicized, and then the next one that we're going to be stepping into is underlined. So let's go ahead and click on Evaluate cell D5. When you go in there, the value or the result of that is 40, as you can see right there. And as you can see, this isn't a too complex function to be able to use this feature here, but nonetheless, you're getting a feel for it, and so you can go ahead and kick it up a notch if you have more complex functions or formulas, or some really nasty nested formulas that you got to work with. In any case, there's the result. Here's the next one, D3, click Evaluate. It's negative 2400, click Evaluate again. The final result, that of course you can see right there, and then you can go ahead and restart over again. The Outline and Group Data feature will take any range of cells that a formula is dependent upon and turn it into a collapsible and expandable group. So for example, I've got this cell, double click, that formula is dependent upon this range here, so when I turn this feature on, it'll convert that into a collapsible expandable group. And the benefit behind that is that if I don't want to view the details, just the total for each employee for quarters 1 through 4, I don't have to. Let me hit the escape key, go for Marge, and go through quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4 to get to the total, but it'll be collapsed, and this column C will be adjacent to column H, so no gaps. And it works vertically as well, as long as I got it structured correctly. In other words, I got the totals all in a row, and not a total here for quarter 1 here, and then quarter 2 down here, and then quarter 3 over here. I mean, that's not well laid out. And good luck with Excel being able to give you that auto outline feature. And so what it'll do is it'll go ahead, because this formula is dependent upon that range, it'll convert that range into a collapsible one that will collapse everything here, or all these rows. Let me hit the escape key so I can just view the totals for each quarter and also the averages. And so there will be a total of 2 groups, horizontally and vertically. Why? Because I have one that's dependent upon the range, the total, and I have the second one, the average, that's dependent upon the same range as well. So I'll have 2 buttons that I can click on to collapse quarters 1 through 4 for the total, and then the average, well, that will collapse not only quarters 1 through 4, but include the total, because we want to be able to hide everything to just be able to see Marge next to the average and not have to go through everything here. And it works vertically as well. And so to go ahead and do the auto outline, click anywhere within the database. Come up here, click on the Data tab, go to the Outline group, click on the group drop-down arrow, and there it is, Auto Outline. Click on it, and boom, there it is. You can see up at the top you've got two collapsible buttons that when you collapse them you can expand them, and also vertically as well, or for the rows. So up here you can see that that one's in the totals column, so when I click on it, it collapses to the totals column. Click on to expand it, opens everything that it collapsed, which include all these cells that that formula is dependent upon. And so you got the average as well. When I click on that, collapses it. And so we've got Marge right next to the average, that when I expand it, I don't have to go through all this to be able to get to the average and go, let's see, Marge, oh, she's the average here. Okay, maybe not so complex for you, but if you have a lot of data, your eyes can get ski-wavery, and you may want to get some help here. And plus, it's a lot easier when they're adjacent to one another. And then you also have them vertically, so we've got the quarter totals. Click on it, collapses everything, just gives us the total for the quarters. And then expand it, and then you can collapse that just for the averages. Click to expand it. And then you also have the levels that we've got vertically and horizontally. So there's level 1, which is just the average, then level 2, which includes the total, then level 3, which includes everything. And the same thing here, level 1, 2, and 3. Or you can do a combo, level 2 for the rows and level 2 for the columns. And so we get the quarter totals and the quarter average. And then if you want to go ahead and clear this out, you don't want them grouped anymore, then come up here on the Data tab to the Outline group and click Ungroup and go down to Clear Outline, and we're back to where we started. Now, if you just want to do a range, either of columns or of rows, and not have a combination of both, like let's say I just want to do quarters 1 through 4 to get the totals and not do rows to get the quarter totals down below when I collapse the rows, but just the columns, then go ahead and select the columns here. You don't have to select the entire columns like D through G. You can just go ahead and select the range of cells within those columns. Then come back up here on the Data tab to the Outline group and click on Group, or you can click on the drop-down arrow and click on Group, same thing. And then it says, do you want to group them by rows or by columns? If I group them by rows, well, do I have any rows selected? No, but if I group them by columns, I've got a total of 4 columns selected, so if I select that and click Okie dokie, they're all grouped by the column here, so I got a single button to collapse it, and oh, isn't that fun? And I've got 2 levels. The first level is where everything is collapsed. The second level is the details, everything. And then of course you can ungroup that by coming back up here, click Ungroup to clear outline, and we're back to where we started. Now finally, we covered the subtotals of groups in an earlier training video, but hey, different database, maybe you can pick something new up from doing it in this database. And so the subtotals is that if I want to get the subtotals for, like let's say each region, for all those in the east and in the south, to do the subtotal feature, I have to have them grouped first or sorted so they're in groups of all the east and all the souths. So to get them grouped, the key word is sorting. We can go ahead and sort these, so it'll do ascending or descending. It doesn't matter, either way they're going to be grouped. All the E's for East and all the S for Souths. So go ahead and click within that column, and then come up here on the Data tab and click on, let's do Sort A to Z. And then we have all the E's together because it's sorting ascendingly, so E's then down to the F's, G's, well, the S's is all I've got left. In any case, once you have them grouped, after you sort them, all the E's and the S's together, and then as you recall to go ahead and do the subtotal, come up here on the Data tab to the Outline group and click on Subtotal. And as we covered in the subtotal training video, but different database. And so this is just an extra review here. And you can see that at each change in the region, well, it's the same. So at the first change, you can go ahead and use the sum function or say that you want to count up or do the average. We'll keep it simple. We'll add up at the first change for the east. What? We want to add the subtotal to the average, or let's not do that. Let's go ahead and get the total for the east, and it's these 3 cells right here. And then at the next change, which is going to be south, so when you go from south to nothing, then it'll give us a subtotal for the totals for the south here. And that's pretty much it. Just go ahead and click Okie dokie, and there you go. So we've got the total for the east right here, and then the total for the south right there. Cool. And then of course you get these collapsible buttons here. If you just want to focus on the south, collapse the east, go ahead and expand it, and then collapse the other. or better yet, just collapse them all so you can get the grand total here. And you've got your levels again. The first level is the grand total, second level is the subtotals, and then the third level is everything. And then of course, if you want to make any changes to it, just come back up here to the outline group, click on subtotal, change the function if you want something like the average, or if you want to add a subtotal to the quarters, or if you just want to go ahead and remove them all, click on that, and we're back to where we started. Sparklines are tiny little charts embedded into a cell for a selected row, not columns. It only works with rows. So if I go ahead and select this row, and I want a little tiny sparkline chart, then come up here and click on the Insert tab, and go to the Sparklines group. And you got 3 to choose from. You have a basic line, then you have columns, and you have win-loss. Let's go ahead and choose line. Opens it up, and it says, okay, you've got your range, D4 through G4. Now, where do you want to plop this sparkline into? You can even choose a cell that contains a number if you'd like, and click Okie dokie, and there it is. Let me click off. It's really hard to see, but nonetheless you can put it in there. Let me go ahead and select it. When you select it, you bring up its related contextual design tab, so you can make various changes to it, including the style. If you want to choose something else, like maybe orange, or something close to orange, let me hover over it. It's the Sparkline style accent 6 darker 25%. Okay. And if you made a mistake and you want to get out of it or clear it out, then with the cell selected, you can come up here to the group and click on Clear, or you can go ahead and right-click on the cell, go down to Sparklines, and then come over and down to Clear the selected sparkline or Clear selected sparkline groups. We'll talk about groups in just a minute. Let's go ahead and click on Clear selected sparklines, and let's add it over to the right. So we'll go ahead and select the same range again, and then come up here, Insert, Sparklines, Line, and the cursor's flashing in the location range. So all I have to do is go ahead and click to select the cell and click OK, and there it is. A lot easier, let me click off of it, to see it than in a cell that contains data. And so with it selected, you can come up here to its related design tab, and in the show group you can look for markers. Hey, look at that. It places a point at each one of the quarters. The first point's for the first quarter, the second point, the second, we're starting to go up. Third quarter is the highest. Let's see if it checks out, 22,000 as opposed to the fourth, 19,000. Yeah, it checks. And then with it selected here, if you want to copy it and fill in the rest for the other employees, you can use the autofill handle by hovering over the bottom right-hand corner for that selected sparkline cell. Click and drag down, and it fills it in. And you can come up here, you can look at markers by unchecking markers and saying, just show me the high points. And so it looks like it was the third quarter here, second quarter, first quarter. It looks like the average high point might be the third quarter. In any case, you can look at high points, low points, even negative points if there are any. When I check that, I don't see any because I have no negatives. But if I come up here, like for quarter 2, and type in negative for the sake of showing you a negative here, 20,000, and hit enter, then it shows me the negative point here. Go ahead and click in it, and when I click in it, it selects the entire range. Now why does it select the entire range? It's because by default our sparklines are grouped. Now that has both pros and cons to it. The pro is that when I select one, it selects all. So when I come up here to its related design tab and I want to update the style or even the type, maybe I don't like line, maybe you want a column. Select the column, and you can take a look at the styles and notice that anything in negative is going to be in red. I only have one that's a negative, and that's with the first employee, Marge Simpson. And if you want to see it more definitively, then what you could do is increase the row's height by coming over here, and let's do it in between row 4 and 5 until I can see arrows pointing up and down. Click and drag to stretch it down, and wow, now it's more definitive. And if it helps, you can play with the axis, like add an axis line by coming up here to the group and clicking on the axis line and say that you want to see the axis, and there you go. You can see the axis when there's a negative number, how that one pivots down if the red isn't eye-popping enough, but you get the black line. And then you got the win-loss. Go ahead and select that if you want to update that. So far, all of them are wins except for Marge. Tut, tut, tut. We had a loss in the second quarter. Let me go ahead and go back to the line here. And instead of negative points, which you can see that there's the axis and how far down it goes, we can come back up here, click on Access, and uncheck Show Access. and not see exactly how much of that sparkline goes down below the axis. Then we can go back to markers, uncheck that, choose a different style, click on the drop down arrow, maybe you can go to purple. And like I said, the pros and cons for having them grouped is when you select one, you do anything, it updates all the rest. But if you want to isolate one and break it off from the group, like let's say for Lizzie McGuire, maybe you want to make a special presentation of her, go ahead and right click on that cell, go down to Sparklines, and go over and down to Ungroup. Or of course you can come up here on the Design tab to the Group and click Ungroup, and that works as well. So when I click off and I select the cell for Lizzie, that's by itself, but when I select any of the others, they're in the group still, so it selects the one above Lizzie and the rest down below. Then I can go ahead and select Lizzie and say, let's make her special, and we'll choose Sparkline Style Accent 2, no dark or light, and it pops out a little bit. And then finally, let's go ahead and select it. And come back up here on the Design tab to the Sparkline group and click on Edit Data. You can edit group location and data or single Sparkline data when I select that for what I have selected. And you can go ahead and select another range, click and drag if you want to go to some other range, but it doesn't make sense for this, but you can do it in any case, click Cancel. And then to go ahead and clear them all, let me go ahead and come back up between 4 and 5 until I can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, and double click really fast to do a best fit. Collapses it so we're back to where we started. Then to clear all this, go ahead and click and drag to select the entire range. Come up here on the Design tab to the clear, or just right click on the selection, go down to Sparklines and go over down to Clear Selected Sparklines, and we lose our spark. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.